Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Our next presentation, we're going to get to hear from Colonel Wendelle Stevens. I think everybody with us knows Wendelle. Wendelle is the absolute treasure of ufology. And we're going to take a look today at one of the older cases, as we are wont to do, because there is genuine gold in the older contactee cases. At the time, of course, you're all familiar, the government's favorite method of dismissing contactee information was to ridicule and to slander and to destroy the credibility of anybody that came forward talking about the reality of the fact that we were not alone. So there is gold, pure gold, in these older cases. And Wendelle is now going to share another one of those with us, one, again, with which he has phenomenal personal involvement. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Wendelle Stevens.
Hey, Bob. Thank you. Greetings, my friends. When we're in the planning stages on these things, Bob often asks me what I'd like to do. And this time I said I would like to review the Miller tapes, the Miller transmissions. How many remember Dick? Well, I can't see you out there anyway. So I'll tell you, what are the Galaxy tapes? What are they really? They were tapes that were automatic transmissions. They're channel transmissions done by Richard Miller in trance by the Brothers of the Solar Cross, which consisted of more than 13 human entities operating together aboard a big spacecraft in our atmosphere. Who are those entities? The Brothers of the Solar Cross are a group of human entities from a number of disparate origins. Monica claims he is a natural human being from Mars. Corton claims he is from a planet that they call Corton in another unspecified star system. Kala is from the third planet out in a star system that we call Aldebaran, a planet which they call Sumer. Volta says he comes from the Venus life wave, which he describes as being a little bit different from ours. All of these are members of the Confederation of Planets. So who is Richard Miller? Richard Miller was a young experiencer who had an encounter when he was in his teens and thus interested in the phenomena. He had gone to a Detroit home to witness a demonstration of channeling by Mr. George Hunt Williamson, Dr. George Hunt Williamson of Prescott, Arizona, who had been invited to the home by some other people interested in the phenomena there. George Hunt Williamson was a well-known journalist from Prescott, Arizona, who had been channeling the Solar Cross Brothers for some time. He had already written a book on these contacts called Other Tongues, Other Flesh, which was reissued as Secret Places of the Lion, and another book titled The Saucers Speak. In those books, Williamson described the Confederation of Planets and another similar confederation of planets, and he described and illustrated some of the two basic universal languages, systems from which many of the languages, planetary languages, were derived, much like the Romance languages are derived from Latin in modern times. He described those languages as Galingua and Solex Mal. And then in his book, Other Tongues, Other Flesh, he even gave some examples of their vocabulary, their writing, and a number of these things. These languages are used by two different federations, and they are languages which also were described by Bob Renaud by beings from a planet that they called Corindor. Richard Miller wrote a book, Other Tongues, Other Flesh. It should be coming up on the screen here. I can't tell whether, there it is. That is Other Tongues, Other Flesh, and that was the one that was republished as Secret Places of the Lion, and he also wrote another little book, The Saucers Speak. So how does this connect? Well, Richard Miller had an experience when he was a teenager, and he was interested in the phenomena. He was also in contact with a local discussion group that was holding infrequent meetings in their home at a home of an elderly couple. And he had been invited to this home in Detroit, who had sent Williamson a ticket to come to Detroit and demonstrate his channeling for them and their friends. When Richard arrived, he saw that the group was all elderly people and that there was not enough chairs for all. And so he sat down on the floor leaning against the piano, the leg of the piano there. Having worked all day, he was tired, and so as the discussions were being drawn out, he lay down on the floor under the piano to wait for the events to begin. And he fell asleep laying there. So how did Miller become involved if he's sleeping? When Williamson finally lay himself down on the sofa and took his 3 deep breaths, jerked, and the communicator came through in a loud, clear voice, Richard, on the floor under the piano, also jerked, and the same voice came out of his mouth, loud and clear, in stereo. This is the first time this had ever happened. A remarkable surprise to all of the sitters in that group. When that session was over and Williamson was waking up, Richard also woke up, awakened by the flurry of activity going on around him, and asked the one nearest him, when is he going to start? And when he was told it was already over and that he was in it, he couldn't believe it, until they played him the tape recording of that event back to him. Those people in Detroit tried hard to persuade Dick Miller to do it again, but he couldn't. Finally, after many tries, he did succeed in making contact with the Solar Cross brothers, and by agreement with them, he became a channel also on the condition that he be allowed to remain conscious instead of asleep under the piano, and to be able to observe the communications as they were taking place, which the Solar Cross brothers agreed to do. And after that, he told me that they when they moved in to take over his brain, he moved aside, and they drove the car, and he was sat there and watched them. He saw them, he could speak with them, he could communicate with them while they were doing this. And then when they returned consciousness to him, he woke back up, and he was fully aware of what had taken place, which was the only way he would agree to do this. So how did I become involved? Years after this started, as I was assuming my new assignment as commander of a repair squadron and a fighter wing with 2 F-100 squadrons and 1 F-104 squadron at George Air Force Base in Victorville, California, my squadron communications shop chief came to me and said, I hear you're interested in the flying saucers. I admitted that I was, and he said that he was having a small meeting on the subject in his home on Friday night on the base there. He lived on the base, and that I was invited if I would like to come, which I accepted the invitation. I went to that first meeting after that and met Richard Miller for the first time, who was going to be their voice channel for the evening. Richard Miller was a young man in his early 20s. He was slender, he was slight, he didn't have a heavy voice, he had a kind of a weak voice, he was timid, he didn't like speaking in front of people. He was not a speaker, had no speech training or anything like that. He was just another sitter that had now become the channel. I took a spiral-bound notebook with me to that first meeting to make notes on in case I needed it. And I was really pretty skeptical at first about what was going to happen, and I cautiously made notes in my pilot's shorthand as fast as I could write. So how did I become interested in what was going on? How did I come to take a serious interest in what was going on? It was when the speaker, the alien speaker at that time, the Solar Cross brother speaking at that time, went around the group and mentioned a small fact about what each of them were doing at that time, at that day, myself included, which later was confirmed by everyone there that it was entirely correct. Information that I was not otherwise available to Richard because he came in from out of the household. And I became a little more impressed with the brothers' talent at that point, specifically when they mentioned things that had happened that were very confidential to the party involved, and they had told nobody and admitted that that event was true. When they described news items to us that had not yet been reported, but was confirmed a few days later, I became even more interested in what the Solar Cross brothers had to say. I finally became convinced that they were what they were, and what they were doing was profound and of great interest to me. Surprises. One night they told us about a meeting that they had been observing with their remarkable observational techniques that would have dire implications for all of us there in the room. Oh, that got our attention. The Russian leader, they said, was in Cuba in a room with Castro that night negotiating arrangements for the Russians to station missiles on Cuban soil to counter our activities in Turkey. 1 year later, almost to the month, our fighter wing was moved from George Air Force Base to Homestead Air Force Base, Florida, south of Miami, and became the host to 2 more fighter wings, all on one base in that big standoff with the Soviets under President Kennedy. We had hundreds of airplanes on one base down there, and they were all under our supervision. Another night, they told us that our foolish scientists had almost blown our planet to bits, but that we would never hear about it. According to them, we had tested a new super bomb on a small island in the Pacific, and that explosion gave over 1,000 times the yield calculated by our scientists, and vaporized an entire island and half of the adjacent island with a small hill on it, and left a cavity in the ocean floor 500 feet deep and a mile across. They said that had that not happened where it did, where it picked up that huge volume of water that effectively cooled down the explosion as it propagated, it would have continued to propagate, and the fission fusion chain would have grown to include heavier and heavier elements until the entire planet would become no more than another asteroid belt. My God, what were we doing out there? Why are our science taking such risks? No, we never got any confirmation of that because they don't want us to know about it. But the visitor, Solar Cross communicator that night told us, he said, the formula, if you would write a formula for that bomb, it would be called cal-neutronite. That translates as cadmium, aluminum, lithium, and so forth down the line. The CAD bomb. And we had actually tested one, and the yield was 1,000 times greater than our scientists calculated. And that's serious business. We're about to do another one. Many years later, in the issue for January of 1995, now this is almost 30 years later, the National Geographic published on page 63 a map of that cavity in the ocean floor in a sanitized version of the story. And if you look on the screen, they're going to bring up that page of the National Geographic, and the cavity is in the upper left-hand corner in that picture there. It shows the huge cavity in the floor of the Eniwetok atoll there. The miracle. But to the point of this narrative, and the only reason I'm presenting this today, one of the Space Brothers gave us a list one night. One of the Space Brothers gave us a list of light classical music records to acquire. The ones without words, such as Tales from the Vienna Woods. Actually, that was one of them. Scheherazade was one. The 1812 Overture. Thus Spake Zarathustra, which was used in 2001. And a number of others like that, which we then went about collecting. And then in another session, weeks later, when we had gathered what we had on the table there, they observed that we had some of them and that perhaps that might be enough. And before that session was over, they gave us a long list of musical clips to be taken from those scores in a certain order. We knew very little about music and not enough to copy the clips, but one of our sitters in the group knew of a Hollywood studio that might be persuaded to make the clips for us, and they took the list and the records down to Hollywood. And when the clips had been successfully connected, they were sent back up to us on a wire recorder. In those days, wire recorders were popular. So the music came up on a wire recorder, And we were going to listen to that new medley of our light classics that night after the session. But during that session, a communicator said, "We have a little surprise for you this evening. Our brother Manka will call for the music when he is ready." Then Manka came on, introduced himself, and said, "You may now start the music," which we did, and started another recorder to record the voice and the music. And Manka came on, and he introduced himself, did call for the music. He said, "You may now start the music." And then he began a narrative presentation perfectly coordinated to the musical theme and perfectly timed in sequence and perfectly delivered with no speech defects. Some of you may be members of the Toastmasters here, the speech clubs. And I'd like you to listen closely to what I'm going to play for you here in a moment. And then we'll open the mics after the session here, and I'd like you to come up and try to critique the speech. This young man was channeling this session, sitting straight up in a straight back chair by a table with his hands flat on the table in front of him, looking straight forward with his eyes half closed, and the transmission is coming through him in a voice much stronger than his normal voice, with no speech flaws. He's never had speech training, doesn't do any speaking, yet there was no mispronounced words, no repetitions, no coughing, no sneezing, nothing. None of the, and for 47 minutes. 47 minutes is a long time. A speech master can't do it for 5, and that's what the Toastmasters Club does, is they have somebody do it, and then they rate him. Well, if any of you are members of Toastmasters Club, I'd like to rate this 47-minute delivery. That was done again and again, 10 more times after that, and when the result was played back to the Hollywood studio that extracted the clips for us, that stimulated enough interest, they contacted somebody else, and a radio out of a Hollywood station was contacted, and they arranged to play one Galaxy tape each week for 10 weeks in a row. They made those arrangements with us, and the Solar Cross brothers agreed to deliver some more presentations like that. The program was so successful that it was rescheduled again and again after that. It was called the Galaxy Series, and they would play it during the rates period when the stations were being rated, because it was so popular, everybody tuned in to hear it. So now I'm going to play you one of those tapes. It's called the Solar Tour. And again, if anybody would like to critique the delivery, we're going to open the mics after this and have you come up and help me with this. I want to mention there are at least 3 people in the audience out there that I know of who sat in these same sessions I'm talking about. One of them is Miss Aluti Francesca over here. She's still lecturing. She's as old as I am. She's still lecturing on the Miller tapes and other things. I've got Fred Fox, Captain Fred Fox, American Airlines flight captain, retired, who at the time that he was sitting in the groups was driving a wide-body transport with hundreds of people behind him every day on your American Airlines. And Bob Short is back there someplace, but I don't think he's in. Okay, Bob here was also participating in those. So I may ask one or more of them to come up here to help me answer the questions. So if we can now play the music, we're going to dim the lights down a little bit, and I want you to listen very closely for the coordination of the words to the music and the timing, and when there's emphasis, there's 1812 drums from 1812 Overture. When there's moving music, there's moving theme, there's traveling music. And I want you to look for that and look for speech flaws, and then we'll critique later. Bring up the music, please.
Mars. This one, who is one of the most widely known beings from another planet,
my
is
communication
known as
man
Monica.
introducing
We
the
believe
tape
you
in
will
his home.
find this talk interesting, informative, and thought-provoking. It is an honor to present at this time Monica.
You can turn down the lights up here now. Thank you.
Greetings in the light of our radiant one.
Louder, please.
I am Monica.
Louder.
At this time, I shall conduct you on a tour of our solar system, as if all of you were present aboard one of our craft. We leave your planet's surface, and our craft gradually spirals inwards towards the light of this system, the sun. The first object which draws our interest is the planet known to your peoples as Mercury. As we draw closer to this one, we notice the great contrast between light and darkness. We view its rotation, burningly hot on one side and bitterly cold on the other. This planet, my brothers, we use as an observation and experimental station due to its close proximity to our sun. It proves most valuable. There is no native life on this planet. The only life exhibited is from our people's installations and bases. Much knowledge of benefit to mankind has come from this one. Now, having observed its barrenness, we progress outwards, and that which lies before us is indeed a beautiful sight. The planet spoken of in your mythology, the goddess of love. And truly, the sight of this one, wrapped in its dazzling gown of white clouds, is one of great beauty. I speak now of Venus. The sun's rays dance brilliantly off these clouds, imparting an aura of great loveliness. These clouds, artificially maintained, help create a greenhouse effect on this planet's surface. And as we descend, we pass through a tremendous ocean of ionizing force. Now, beneath these clouds, which do not completely shield the sun's rays from this one's surface, we behold a planet of regal majesty, almost as beautiful as your Earth. Here lies a great race of people. We see great and mighty cities, oceans vast, color rampant everywhere, and a feeling of warmth and gaiety. Indeed, these people are highly regarded throughout this and many other solar systems. Feeling that expression known as love vibrating in the very air about us. We note that even your music speaks of these things, as well as compassion, of great joys and sorrows, of feelings unnumbered in their subtlety, of the emotions of these people, filling the very air about us. This planet, my brothers, represents an evolution only a few thousand years in advance of your own. This life is native to this one, and besides yourselves, is the youngest in this solar system. Now let us leave this one and proceed to one perhaps more familiar to you, your own planet. The green emerald of the solar system, the Earth. This is a most inspiring sight. Your planet, my brothers, is one which has contributed much to its neighbors. But since we are speaking of other things at the moment, let us move on. And proceeding outwards, we see that bright red gleam in your evening skies. That planet known to your astronomers as Mars. Unfortunately, due to your mythology, with terms of violence associated, which is quite untrue. The only violence on this, my planet, is in our struggle against the elements. Now, as we glide in close to this one, we find evidence that indicates that man has been on this one for a considerable length of time. Here we see the remains of great civilizations along the silent lengths of the canals. But the planet is not dead, as we note that a great deal of activity is centered in certain places, and that huge shafts lead into this planet's interior. For you see, people of Earth, most of our living area and industry is underground. As our craft circles this one, we see evidences of great activity. Our instruments record the presence of vast industrial progress. Here we discover that most of the spacecraft used by the Confederation in this sector of space is manufactured. Here the civilization represents a picture of great antiquity, but the very nature of the planet's appearance indicates a type of vitality, a drive that suggests monumental efforts and the spark that has created a people and a race that survives. On our left, we see high mountain chains, purple plateaus, crimson deserts, and at the poles, as our craft approaches, a lovely green area where a city of scintillating splendor greets our eyes. Mars is far from the usual decay, thought to be a partner of great age, as our eyes record. Since this is my planet, I thought it in order to explain these things. Now let us leave this one and spiral outwards again. And lo, what do we behold but a swirling dervish, a ring of tiny fragments, that known to you as the asteroid belt, the remains of a planet. These remnants whirl around my planet, and that one from which life sprang in this system. We look closer now, and behold, the mightiest of all the planets in this solar system, the one known as Jupiter. Truly, this is a singular sight to gaze upon, with its many moons circling about it, those that were created, and those natural from the point of creation. we look down and size that begins to dim one's comprehension of size. We see huge cloud flotillas, mighty land masses, tremendous oceans, and the oldest civilization prevalent in this solar system. Here reside those beings which overlook man's affairs in this sector of space. This is truly the birthplace of life upon our planets. Gaze with wonder and awe. Look upon the majesty of this, the home and cradle of man in this solar system. For here we see, and here dwells those mighty beings of the Adamic race. The shimmering haze about this one blinds your telescopes to the realities present. For the effects of light, distorted by this one's glowing field of force, hides the truth from the eyes of man upon your planet. For we find that the air is light and balmy. It is vibrant, for we see an atmosphere golden in color, and great beings native to this one, whose skin is of golden radiance. Beings fair-haired and majestic. We also see here a civilization that exists partly between the physical and the etheric. Whenever we are close to this one, our very beings leap in recognition, and we send our thoughts of love and gratitude. Let us now proceed again outwards, and we approach the planet known to you as Saturn, the law guardian for this system. Here are found the courts of equality. Here again, your music describes compassion and understanding, the necessary ingredients of true guardianship. In the hours of daylight, brief as they are, the sun's rays glance off the tall marble structures. We see halls, we see pavilions. Everywhere about us, the architecture seems to stand symbolic of these ones' administration of the great radiance. Here also we find a native race whose very essence is a life of balance and harmony, brought about by the understanding of the great laws of cause and effect. Now, as we gradually spiral upwards again in our craft, we see their moons, their areas of recreation, set as they are amid the halo of shimmering light provided by their force fields, described as they are by your people as rings. We are afforded a vista of truly enchanting splendor, horizons vast beyond comprehension, open vistas to our eyes. For we watch as this one whirls through the brief hours of daylight and dusk. And now, as we move on and spiral out, we come next to a lovely sight, the planet known to you as Neptune, the bearded one with his trident. We see here, my brothers, a planet whose atmosphere glows with an electric blue color. We see evidence, as we circle closer, that here, evolution traversing along a different route has progressed through the physical, and all life exists as etheric. We find a native race existing in the shadowy outlines of coruscating light, and they welcome our presence. A feeling of great joy pervades our bodies as these ones unleash wave on wave of welcome. As we pause our craft and hover, we see wave after wave of color greet our eyes. For there is little to see upon this one's surface, lovely as it is. For all life seems to abound in the very air itself. Great shadowy outlines of these ones drift upon the currents of the air itself, from one place to another. The clouds about us shape and reshape in formations resembling truly cathedrals in the sky, as these ones direct their thoughts to the molding of matter itself. We sense their elation as beside our craft a shape begins to materialize, and the thought invades our minds that this is a gift, an appreciation of our visit. Below us, there forms from thought alone a replica of your earth, conceived by these great minds, rotating slowly on its axis, bathed in the rich emerald colors, known throughout the galaxy. Visitors from many regions stop here to see the greatest works of mental art exhibited. And to these people, this art is their export, their gift to man, scattered as he is along the galactic lands. For these ones provide beauty as their talent. Let us hope, my brothers, that soon you shall witness these things for yourselves. Let us move on now, though, and examine the next sight. For we see the planet known as Uranus. Here, our eyes tell us, is not a cold, frigid, desolate waste, but a certain warmth. No cold is encountered as we descend and see a lovely land of rolling meadows and softly flowing forests. There is very little water on this planet, but the rich clouds above us do assure an adequate supply for the lush vegetation present below on the surface. Here also is a native race, wise with experience, controlling their ionosphere to produce this garden spot at the near edge of the solar system. Now, as we continue gliding along, we see the tiniest of coves, little bays and inlets along the coast, the only ocean present. Here also we come upon the Uranians, a race noted for their powers of observation, a race that provides trained navigators for the space fleets of many galaxies. Strange, is it not, that these people are so noted? These men prowl the uttermost reaches of that known as universe, always providing that unerring sense that is theirs, and leaving behind a planet that is one of the most pleasant recreational areas in this solar system. For Uranus is noted as a garden spot, a place where one can come to shed everyday problems of life temporarily and enjoy the warm contentment of the mighty forests and plains. Many of our people come here to spend time such as many of your people engage in similar outdoor activities. Here, the dreamlike quality of the air itself seems possessed of healing qualities, and the scattered cities provide one with the sense of quiet often needed. Some of the great institutions of learning also exist here. But now, let us move out again and view the remaining planet left, the one you know as Pluto. The dazzling white glare of this one can be seen from a great distance and would seem to indicate the presence of perhaps a frigid world. But again, our eyes are deceived, for as we spiral inwards, we notice that no frozen wastes greet our eyes, but instead mighty rolling dunes of bleached white sand. For, my brothers, Pluto is an arid desert world. No native life is in evidence. But as we swing around this one's equator, we do notice the presence of man, and on a gigantic scale. For here are the great spaceports, the trade centers, the planet that is the hub of trade relations throughout this section of the galaxy. The presence of large shelters, mammoth loading areas, huge ramps and expressways come into sight as we glide along, and activity vast beyond belief. We see the spacecraft from 100 different suns, from all the reaches of the galaxy, berthed in their cradles, and the unloading and loading of strange cargoes. Man here stands face to face with men from all parts of the galaxy. Sometimes they even stare at one another's exhibits of progress from these many worlds. I believe the women of your planet would never leave this place, for we have noted their great curiosity when on excursions to procure goods. This is the heart of man's trade and exchange qualities. Pluto, a desolate planet, devoid of native life, but tamed and converted to man's uses, a feat proclaiming man's eagerness to still utilize the gifts of creation. Now, since there is little of interest left here, let us move on and outwards to a point several million miles beyond the orbit of Pluto. Here, a strange sight comes to our vision, for we see a huge platform in space, an artificially created world, a miniature planet. As we draw closer, we see a thriving metropolis, landing berths of tremendous size. Here, the mighty starships, too large to ever touch a planet's surface, are moored in space, their cargoes unloaded and ferried to Pluto by more conventional craft. Here also, we see the legendary ships from the planets of the star known as Procyon. These craft represent technologies and evolutions of a most advanced form of man. An estimate of the age of these ones approaches what could be called in your terminology an age of over 50 billion years. Now, as our craft circles and we descend and land on a large stage high in the upper reaches of this metropolis, we disembark for a few moments and proceed to a viewing platform. Here we stand. Before us are the stars of an entire universe, presenting a challenge which has fired our imaginations as well as yours. Here we gaze upon infinity. For in over 20,000 years of space travel, my brothers, we have never yet found an end. There always lies infinity before us. We stand here somewhat humbled, for here we see a majesty that staggers the mind. Here we gaze upon the awesomeness of a universe. Here we see that which was orderly created, not for the puny explorations of man, but for the creation of self and being, of experience and growth, of the true learning of all wisdom and knowledge. Here we stand upon a platform, a threshold, overlooking the universe. And now we turn and look back over this miniature atom that we call our solar system. Let us try and envision its place and relationship to all that lies about us. Parsec upon parsec of space, and galaxies ad infinitum. We stand in wonderment, and we think, how small are we in this limitless vastness, but yet how proud we are. For this, my brothers, is man's attainment, his effort to reach towards that which he knows is supreme, that one that is all. Here we behold the handiwork of man, and as we now turn and once again face outwards, we behold the handiwork of our Creator, beauty and majesty arrayed before us, and behind us, man's strivings towards this goal. The realization comes to us that all life, everywhere in the universe, is striving for kinship, for reunion with the essence from which it all came. And now, my brothers and sisters, we must return. We board our craft and slowly spiral inwards towards your planet, the Earth. We trust that this little excursion beyond the confines of your world has brought the realization that you are not alone in this cosmic mansion, that these halls are peopled, and that those of Earth have, as a part of their heritage, a rightful place in this drama of evolution and interstellar effort. You have been tourists for the past few moments, but you shall soon be participants. It has been my privilege to escort you on this tour, but I must now leave. In the light of our radiant one, I depart now, leaving you with a little melody which speaks more eloquently of love than perhaps even I can express it. I am Manka. Adonai, my brothers of Earth. Adonai.
That was a delivery by an alien man who says he comes from Mars. He's very similar to us, speaking through Richard Miller in trance. And I would like to, do we have any members of the Toastmasters Club here or former members? Probably not. One over there? Could we have somebody from the Toastmasters Club, if they're here, to come up and critique the presentation we just heard? And then we'd like to hear from anybody else what they think of the presentation and what they think of the delivery. This man is not a speaker. He didn't. That was a different voice from his regular voice. He is timid, and he's doing that presentation alone. So would anybody like to come up? Would you like to? Nobody wants to critique it? Oh, you're a Toastmaster? Wonderful. Tell us, folks, what you do in the Toastmasters Club, if you would.
I was learning how to become a better speaker and promote my own books.
Now, what would you think of if you were in a club meeting now and you've just heard a Toastmaster make a delivery and you're going to critique him, how would you critique this presenter?
I would say it was fascinating, I was deeply moved by it, and I have many problems with it.
Many problems with it?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us
In fact, I came up here to ask you a question.
Good.
Okay. When I was in high school, I read Robert Heinlein's book, The Green Hills of Earth.
Yeah.
And we had in the 1970s referred to the Earth as green.
Yes.
Now, where is Dr. Fred Fox?
Who?
Okay. Find me after this. I'm 6'6". That's 198 centimeters for any of you who are in the metric system. Thank you. I always. Oh, this is great. Somebody. And Fred, you gave me a poster portraying the Earth as green. And that was because that just seemed legitimate, that the Earth was green.
Yes.
Then we went into space and found out that the Earth was blue.
Yes.
This was not covered. Something else that was not covered. By the way, I would like to preface my next question with the fact that I think the scientific method has held back humanity spiritual development to a terrible degree.
I would agree.
Okay. Thank you. How come there is no mention of Nibiru here? Because all of a sudden people began channeling from Nibiru when Zecharia Sitchin became popular around 1982.
That was.
And I'm wondering why we
and-
refer to the Earth as green when it's really blue. I have
They call
millions
it
of
the
questions,
green
but
plant.
I'm
From
going
close up, from close up, the grass and trees are green. When we look through the atmosphere, we see it as blue. They're coming into the surface of the planet.
Okay.
When they're communicating with us, they're not far
So it
away.
would be green to them then?
It would be, the planet would appear green to them, yes.
Okay. Well, we have nothing that we have seen through our scientific method to show that the Earth is green.
Well, if you get close enough, if you look at Brazil from the
I'm not
space,
trying
it's
to be
green on
mean
your-
or anything,
Pardon?
but
Yeah, if you get out in space, you get the atmospheric bluing, yes.
yeah. But I enjoyed the presentation.
From a speech point of view, this man had no speech training. Would you say that he did a pretty good job delivering something?
Yes,
in a
his
coherent
delivery
way?
was great. I heard every word.
Yeah.
And I have hearing problems.
And he didn't cough, he didn't sneeze, he didn't stop. He had a couple of halts.
No,
that were
no. He
deliberately planned. They were pauses for effect.
was very smooth, very
Yeah.
smooth talking,
Very
and
deliberate.
it was fascinating, as I say.
Yes.
I would show it to friends. But
Okay.
I would not show, I'm a retired college professor, and I would not show it to any of my friends who were on the staff of my college.
Okay, what did you think of the explosion that our scientists carried out in the Pacific that they never told us about? When they exploded a bomb that the aliens described as cal-neutronite.
Give me that word again.
Cal-neutronite.
Okay.
Reduced chemically, it's cadmium, aluminum, lithium, nitrogen, and several other
Okay.
things. That's a CAD bomb. And the thing that worried us is the Space Brothers told us that the yield on that bomb was 1,000 more than our scientists calculated, and vaporized an island and a hole in the ocean 500 feet deep and a mile across, half of another island with a mountain on it out there. Don't you think we should be waiting until we can understand these things a little better
Oh, yes,
than going
I
out
agree.
there and shooting a firecracker?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm
and they-
very much a green
We'll never
person.
hear of that. The National Geographic showed a picture of the hole, underwater pictures. The dust is so fine in the cavity that was left by this explosion, nothing grows there, and it's so fine that nothing can grow there. It's just a dead crowd. Apart from the radiation, it's a lifeless crater.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, sir.
Anyway, there are other people waiting for you
Oh,
here. Thank
let's
you.
hear from another one. Another Toastmaster? Oh, well, let's hear what you have.
Our
Oh, it's too tall for you, huh? We'll have to get our engineer back up here.
Well,
Now
I
it's
wanna
too
get the-
low.
Want to get the thing comfortable because it's more difficult to talk if I have to lean over.
Yeah.
My name is Jerry Schiffman,
Nice to meet you, Jerry.
and I would say that if I heard this man speak, I would have been fascinated,
Yes.
primarily due to the flow and confidence and consistency of the voice. Never paused, never hesitated. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's quite remarkable. So that's that critique. I did notice something that sort of raised a question in my mind.
What was that?
Well, I would have to go back through to be sure, but it seems to me that he got Neptune and Pluto. I'm sorry, Uranus and Neptune turned around. He came to
No, he had them in correct
he came to Neptune first, and then Uranus, and then Pluto, and that's the wrong order. It's Saturn,
He also had
Uranus, Neptune,
Uranus in
Pluto.
there.
Yeah, so I would have to go back and listen to verify that, but I think he got those two reversed.
And then he went beyond Pluto to an artificial port out
Yeah,
there
he went out beyond the solar
that
system.
we are now discovering a planet beyond Pluto, or a body of some kind. Don't know what it is. But his description that is the port, the commerce, port of commerce, intergalactic commerce for our solar system. And the big ships come into that port because they can't approach a planet.
Well, the whole business.
Pardon?
That's called Melkor, the satellite Melkor, out beyond Pluto.
Oh, okay.
All people in the Solar Confederation and lands and planets are welcome there.
Okay.
Because they're on peaceful ventures.
Okay, let the gentleman finish here. Are you?
I don't really have any. The whole business about all of the civilizations and spaceports and all of this, I don't make any comment at all. It doesn't really
Yeah.
make sense given what we know
It
now.
wouldn't mean anything to you unless you had closer contact with him, as we did.
Well, okay. Yeah, I would have to have closer contact.
Next?
Yes, hello. My name is Dion Pollitt,
Oh, nice
and
to
I've
meet
been a Toastmaster for 12 years.
you. Wonderful.
And I think you're doing a wonderful job, Wendell. Your speech is, give him a hand.
Not mine.
Your speaking is strong. You have great gestures. And this man that was channeling, I have to tell you, 30 years ago, I was a channel too. And I decided I didn't like someone else taking over my body. So I quit channeling.
Yeah.
And in 95, I became a Toastmaster. This man's speech was very smooth. The music was hypnotic. And my Windows Media Player does the same graphics for any music you play. And so my challenge would be, if you're going to make a presentation like this, because there is so very, very much information in there, including trade centers on Pluto and Uranians and the things you were talking about out in the ocean that got wiped out. There's just so very, very much information there. I would probably say a 10, 15-minute presentation with more dynamic graphics would be even more powerful and much more inspiring. But it was wonderful. It was really good information. And the music, quite honestly, put me to sleep. I was getting a little bit hypnotic watching it, so I had to close my eyes to not get hypnotized. But it was great. It was wonderful. It was powerful. A lot of good music.
Yeah.
A lot of good information. Thank you.
I mentioned just a couple of things that were verified. We had many such things that we would have. They gave us foreknowledge of a lot of things, like the missiles in Cuba. And a year later, just like they said this is going to have great import to you. And our whole wing moved to Florida, became the host wing for the whole military operation down there.
Yeah,
so it did become pretty
I
important.
look forward to going to the Trade Center in Pluto. That would be fun.
And you know, there were 13 different communicators, different entities with different voices, all coming from the same young man. 7 of them delivered presentations like this, synchronized the music just as well as Monica did. Anybody else want to? Thank you.
I'm not a Toastmaster.
Oh my goodness! Can somebody help the poor lady?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Wait a minute. Yes, yes. Okay. I was a high school speech critic, and the things that I wanted to share was his voice was very low-toned, which meant that it came from within. He was very confident. The adjectives he used were very concise, and as you noticed, it felt like you were on a journey with him, with these simple words, but that were so beautiful with the music. Now, I meditate, and I felt like it was a meditation. I do meditate with Whitley Strieber's The Blue Pearl meditation, which he got from William Henry's The Blue Pearl, and he likens the planet, our planet, as a blue pearl. And he has you meditate from out of your body out into the universe to look at this blue pearl, which is our planet. And he mentions the other planets, but for me to have this as a meditation, I would think would enhance my way of looking, well, through myself. And he has us take that blue planet and take it into our solar plexus and meditate. I just thought it was a beautiful
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anybody else? Can I ask Fred Fox, Captain Fred Fox, to take the mic here? Are you still here, Fred? Yeah, okay. Fred Fox was an airline captain for American Airlines. For years, he's now retired, but he sat in some of the sessions with Richard Miller also. And we're going to ask him to tell us what he thought of them.
Well, just to recapitulate, I met Wendelle in 1971 through the Lorenzens, who were the founders of APRO.
Yeah.
And that was during one of the layovers in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And through you, I was brought into contact with Richard and got a copy of his first 20 tapes, which he
As a matter
had
of fact, we
channeled.
used one of those tapes to present this.
And I spent about 4.5 years at home and on layovers transcribing those tapes into a manuscript form that was eventually published in a limited edition called Star Wars. But in 1975 or 76, Richard moved from Phoenix up into the Bay Area,
Yeah.
where he joined with the McCampbells and the DeBrys to form a solar cross teaching group, and I became one of the first instructors. So I sat in on a lot of discussions with Richard Miller. And having heard all his tapes, I'm very familiar with the differences in the voice and delivery that you mentioned.
Yes. Okay. Did describe Richard Miller as a person, as one of the people sitting here. He was young. He was slender. He didn't have a real strong voice naturally. When he was in trance, he had a pretty good voice. How would you describe him?
Well, when I met him in his 70s, of course, he was older, probably in his 50s.
Yeah.
And he was into communications a lot. He was devoted to putting together these tapes in a professional form, and then putting together the instructor programs with slides presentations that we could go out and teach this information to whoever was interested in learning it.
Okay. All right. You have anything you'd like to add?
No,
Okay.
not at this time.
Okay, Bob Short, would you like to come up here? You sat in some of the sessions with Richard and even channeled one or more of his channels at a later time, did you not?
That's correct. Anyway, the last time I saw Richard Miller, I might preface this by saying that Richard and I and Georgette Williams and Rick Williamson worked together for a number of years, okay? I had met him very early on, back, I would say, probably following about the mid-50s, okay? And that's when he was married to his first wife, and he was living in Hollywood at that time.
Yeah.
Anyway, it finally wound up where Richard and I, being friends over the years, I missed him. I mean, I
ran out of touch with him for a while. Finally found him again in Phoenix, working for radio station KOOL in Phoenix, Arizona. And by then he was married to his third wife, Bertha, and he and I did a session in his home. He still had that very smooth delivery. He really did. It was amazing, just absolutely amazing, because he didn't stop to go, or take a breath, and so it just flowed like water. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And as he described the planets, I might tell you that we have our own solar tour, okay? I don't want to, let's say, take away from him, but I will tell you several incidents that was very peculiar in our solar tour. When they were describing the fire tongue, Maldek, Mal meaning tongue. See, it's a biblical statement, that which, let's say, it is not that which goeth into a man, which cometh out of a man, which defiles him, and so forth. Tongue. In fact, the sky god, Enlil, his signature is a tongue with a roll, with a dot, okay? Basically. Anyway, Maldek, because of the people of the Ptolemaians, who basically now are the descendants, are the people of Mexico and South America and Central America that speak Nahuatl, the serpent tongue. They are the descendants coming from the hole in the sky to our planet many, 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 many thousands or millions of years ago. Anyway, when they were describing to us about Maldek and how and what happened to it in between, at that time when the planets were in a different place in our solar system, they were not as they are now. Okay. Anyway, when they were describing this, what happened, the Ptolemaians, who were an agrarian people, peaceful, were threatened by the people of Karna, so forth, and evidently, for whatever reason, they used this calneutronite missile, and when they sent it into the bowels of that planet, and boom, they actually imploded the planet, okay? Yeah. And actually, on the recording, you can hear the sound of the implosion. Yeah. We did not put any music on. We used no sound effects at all, and you can hear that terrible. And they talked at the time about the terrible rendering. It was almost just, God, it almost made me, afterward when I listened to this, I almost cried, because I thought, oh my God. But anyway, I was going to say that and the fact that one time we were on board one of the carrier craft out there, okay, now I was describing to people what it was that we were looking at through their windows, and as I was doing it, my source was also channeling at exactly the same time. Now, try to put that together.
Yeah. We're almost out of time here. Thank you, Bob. Yes, there were more channeling like that, coordinated to the music by other members of the Solar Cross group, and there was another 45-minute presentation on the destruction of Maldek. It described a planet with two major societies in conflict with each other that had reached the stage of atomic weapons, and they had both built the super bomb, the calneutronite bomb, cadmium, aluminum, lithium, and so forth. And an accident happened, and a weapon was launched, and automatically triggered other weapons, which triggered other weapons, which triggered other weapons, till they're all in the air, and the mass effect of all of them blew the planet to bits, and it became the asteroid belt. That was the end of that civilization. But there were a dozen other presentations like this on other subjects by other members of the Solar Cross group, and they were all very profound, and they were all almost perfectly delivered, just like this one. And for instance, another one was the Galactic Tour. It takes us on a tour of galaxies, not just planets in our solar system. And there was one on the destruction of Maldek, where they described having a monitor near that planet when the conflicts reached a very dangerous stage, and they called it a chronomonitor. They said that it was capable of recording 50,000 hours of information on a sphere about the size, a small sphere about the size of a marble, crystal sphere, and that recording of the moments of destruction of Maldek, as Bob mentioned, were actually played back from that chronomonitor through Richard Miller to the tape, and it's a very spectacular thing to hear. So our time, okay, Pat, what do you got there?
Wendell, Monica mentioned that there was life on other planets,
Yes.
many other planets.
Our planets in our solar system.
We don't seem to see that with our Hubble Space Telescope. Can you tell us about the life on the other planets? There were several of them.
He says that Richard Miller's channel said that we're not able to see them yet. Yeah. We don't. Our instrumentation doesn't allow us to even see cities and major constructions on us, much less life there. But that there is life. It's in our solar system. It does. Some of it moves from planet to planet. They say that Earth was settled by life forms from Jupiter, and that so in their description of how life is propagated from planet to planet, it's like the Europeans came here and settled America and South America. The Jupiterians came here and settled Earth and some of the other bodies.
He mentioned Jupiter, and is that the Rama group from Ganymede, the moon of Jupiter?
From what?
Ganymede. Ganymede from the moon
Ganymede?
of Jupiter.
Oh,
is that another?
Yes, there were such transmissions, but I don't have them here.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your listening. Got another one? Okay, we'll take one more. Oh, this is Ludi Francesca. She. Okay, good. Okay.
My husband and I knew Richard Miller. And
Can you be a little louder, Francesca?
my husband and I knew Richard Miller in the 50s when I came out from England. Can somebody turn this
The mic is on, honey. You'll just have to speak a little bit louder.
Hi. I'm Ludi Francesca, and we knew Richard Miller. He channeled, or rather received through tensor beam in our home in Santa Barbara. The question that the previous gentleman asked that I think you all need to have answered clearly is that life on most planets in the system is not third dimensional as we know it here. It is verging on the etheric and fourth dimensional. That is why there's the discrepancy between what our scientists are telling us and what really exists. The big story is that we are now moving in our Earth and our cultures into fourth dimensional existence. That is what is coming up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Anybody else want to offer a comment here? Okay, the Solar Cross brothers gave us information on a number of things that I didn't have time to mention here, so I've got a couple of minutes left, so I'll tell you that they went one night, they went around the group and told each one about physical disabilities that they had, and some of them didn't want to admit it, and some were ashamed of their physical disabilities. But after it was over and we polled them, everybody said that the description was exactly accurate. The Solar Cross brothers could see this somehow through their vision. Now, the Solar Cross group was made up of, they all had personalities and characters. They used different inflections in their dialect, in their language, in their dialogue. They used different words, a different kind of vocabulary. They had different specializations. One was a communications expert, and he was very familiar with communications terms, languages, and procedures. Another one was a mathematician. Another one was a navigator. Another one was an anatomist, like a doctor. He was the one that could look through our physical bodies and see malfunctions before they manifested in a physical sense, and he often gave us help in that respect. There was when we would ask a particular question, they would refer it to a specialist in their group that had the most information on that subject, and he would answer. So we were able to get information by asking the right questions and waiting for them to provide us answers, and as Laludi said, when we asked about the life forms on all the planets, are they like us? They said they're similar to us, but they're not all in the same physical density that we are. That when they come here, they might appear in our physical density. When they're in their native planets, they're not as dense as we are, or equal to our density. And so we may not perceive them unless they're here in our vibrational realm. Yeah. Are they still around? I believe the Solar Cross brothers are still here. They may have new channels now, but George Hunt Williamson was the first one. And then it was passed on to Richard Miller. Miller is passed on now too. So there may be somebody else receiving the Solar Cross brothers, because they've been here for a long time, tens of thousands of years. Is there anybody else in the audience here aware of any other communications by the Solar Cross brothers? Manka, Corton, Klala? Okay, Bob Short says he still has communications with Corton and channels from him. So channeling is an interesting phenomena. It took a little while to convince me that there was anything to channeling, and a number of settings, until they began to tell me about things that were going to happen to me a few days later, and then they would happen, or things that had happened that were very secretive in my own mind. I hadn't even told my own wife or anybody else what was going on, and they would tell me. They were very perceptive. They never embarrassed anybody there. They demonstrated that they knew everything about every one of the sitters in the group, but they never embarrassed anybody by revealing anything that he didn't want known. The sessions were regular sessions. We had them almost every Friday night. About the same. We had a doctor. We had a head nurse in a trauma hospital there. We had the chief telephone operator sitting in the same group that I was sitting in. We had another colonel and a major from the base intelligence that was sitting into the groups regularly. So we knew that he was passing information on up the line on what we were doing, and nobody interfered with us. The rest of us were, well, about half of us were military, and the other half were civilians from the local area there. Does anybody else have another question they'd like to ask?
Wendell, I was going to tell you, by the way, that Leroy Gordon Cooper went up. They called him by his first name, Leroy Gordon Cooper, for our communication. All they ever talked about over television radio was Gordon Cooper. And I said, what's this Leroy? Anyway, when he landed in the ocean, they told us that if they didn't correct an electrical glitch in his hatch, that he could be killed. Well, they found out 2 weeks after our communication. Anyway, and they fixed it. But when he landed in the ocean, they said, this afternoon, Leroy Gordon Cooper landed in the ocean. I went, oh my God, it really is his first name.
Okay, you want to come up here and say that so the rest can hear it? They couldn't hear you over there. But he's talking about our astronaut Gordon Cooper when he was coming in from a mission, right?
Gordon Cooper went up. Is this on or off? Is it on or off? Can you hear it?
You're on now,
okay.
Yeah.
When they always talked about Gordon Cooper, NASA talked about Gordon Cooper, but through our communications, they called him Leroy Gordon Cooper, and I thought, what? What's this Leroy business? What is this Leroy? Anyway, they also said that if they didn't find an electrical glitch in his hatch before he went up, that it would create a very serious problem that could actually end his life. Well, 2 weeks after we got our communication, they found the glitch and they fixed it. It came out in the news, and I thought, wow, they must know what's going on. Anyway.
What you're saying is that the Space Brothers, the Solar Cross Brothers, gave you the information before you got the verification.
Yeah, Wendell knows that I still receive information from Corton. Anyway, when he landed, when Gordon Cooper landed in the ocean, was picked up by a very famous aircraft carrier, which I won't go into. But anyway, they said, this afternoon, Leroy Gordon Cooper landed in the ocean, and I went, oh my God, his first name is really Leroy. Oh my God. See?
So you got your confirmation.
That's not the first. I mean, they gave us all kinds of, including how to actually find the differences between the weight, the true weight of objects, and the weight with their field effects. And we had people come to our home who were scientists from up in Moffett Field, and they said, my God, Mr. Short, we don't even have this. We don't even have this information. Can we copy this so we can take it?
Their science was that far ahead of ours, we hadn't caught up to it.
Yeah. So anyway, because the objects were losing weight coming back from space, and they needed to find out what to do.
Yeah.
Well, they gave us that, and this guy was just floored. Then he said, do you have anything else? And I said, well, yeah, we have this formula. The guy said, I don't know from formulas. I told him, look, I don't know that. Give me layman's language, fine. Anyway, they told us it could only give us half of this formula, because if they gave us the other half, and they were talking about transmutation and neutrinos at the time also, that if we gave you the other half of the formula, it could place both you and your family in a jeopardy under federal government. He said, so we're only giving you half of it. When this fellow said, can I look at that? And I said, well, yeah, sure. His face went absolutely ashen. I mean ashen.
To find out
he said, I worked for the Atomic Energy Commission in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I said, oh, really? I said, show me your identification. He said, okay. He popped it on me, and he said, do you know what this is? And I said, no, I don't know what it is. I told you that. He said, this is half the formula for a neutron bomb. And I said, what? He said, don't ever have this published. If you do, you'll find out that you'll land in federal prison with your family so fast you won't know what hit you.
So we had all kinds of information that their information was way ahead of ours, scientifically and everywhere. We're catching up all the time, and that impressed me a great deal. I was an engineering officer, and I was very much impressed by the knowledge that they had that preceded ours. And I've got about 1 minute remaining. Anybody got a quick question here? If not, I thank you for your attention, and thanks for listening. Thanks a lot.